Oh man, she did what? Why is the government always lying? That's not your fault. That was your mother's job. I know it sucks. It's hard, but it's fair. If we don't get our heads out of our collective asses, we're gonna be lost in the sauce. You knew he was sorry when you met him at DHS. Come on, baby girl. What's the solution? Look, I know I'm fucked up.
Welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka the Angry Nerd. The Angry Nerd Podcast is taped in front of a live audience in my mom's basement. Brought to you by some bad life choices and a few shattered dreams. The Angry Nerd Podcast is made possible by the money that I get from my wife out of my SSI check, by money that I get from some chick named Joni, and by proceeds from listeners like you. What up, what up, what up? And just FYI, I'm going to pass the offering plate around one time for the one time. If you want to support the Angry Nerd Podcast, then make your way over to Cash App and hit us off with some twos and fews at the Angry Nerd. What is up, good people? What is up? Let me hit you guys off with some hot topics tonight. There's a couple of things that jumped out at me in the news today. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to all of my listeners on Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. And for those listeners, I want you to know when I refer to the chat, I'm talking to my good brothers and sisters in Facebook Live, because while I record this for you guys on Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube, I also broadcast live from Facebook so that those guys and gals can chime in live on some of these topics that I have. Okay, jumping right into it. The first thing, George Floyd's funeral. This was very strange to me, but I had to speak on it. I've never heard of this before. They had a traveling funeral. And I guess I get like if you have family that lives all over the country, I can understand having a traveling funeral. That makes sense to me. It still is very strange. It's something that I never heard of before. But with this traveling funeral, out came all of the, what do you call those people? Opportunists. And no bigger opportunist than Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton comes out, and of course, like he does, he likes to stand on the shoulders of downtrodden, disenfranchised black people and make his bones on their tragedy. And Al Sharpton, and in typical traditional Al Sharpton fashion, he made this whole George Floyd funeral about him and how he can do X, Y, and Z. Let us not forget that Al Sharpton did get caught by the federal government trying to buy kilos of cocaine some years back for, rumor had it that it was for Don King, that he was trying to make this purchase of cocaine. I don't 100% know that that's who he was purchasing cocaine for, but I do know that there was a federal case with Al Sharpton where he was trying to procure kilos of cocaine. So I just want to put that out there. So whenever Al Sharpton comes around, I always kind of side-eye that guy and his intentions. But to profit off of this good brother's death and the tragedy and the hardship that his family is going through right now, because this man's name is on everybody's lips in America, and I'm pretty sure that the loved ones already can't really get any peace. They can't get any alone time to grieve properly, because there's a camera everywhere that they look. There is a reporter or something like that everywhere that they turn. And I would think that something like a funeral would be a very intimate setting. And I don't think that I would want people like Al Sharpton coming and using my child or my brother or my significant other's funeral as an opportunity to take a picture. Moving right along, my next topic is it was supposed to be an update. I guess in light of George Floyd and everything that happened with him, all of these police stories are coming out. So when I initially got this topic, I thought it was something that had just happened. But actually, this is a story that happened in 2017, but I did want to share it anyway because it was very interesting. It was the first time that I heard it. Police in France accidentally raped a guy in custody. Apparently 22-year-old, I think in English it would be Theo, but they pronounce it Theo. He, a young man from a suburb in North Paris, he was accosted by French police for interfering when they slapped somebody who was protesting for whatever it was that they had going on over there. I don't know the details about what the protest was, but he confronted one of the officers, and then apparently 5 officers jumped on him, and in the midst of them assaulting him, someone took their truncheon. I looked that term up because I'm not familiar with it. It's apparently a billy club or their equivalent of a nightstick. Well, apparently one of these guys stuck their nightstick in this young man's butt, and they said that it was an accident. But when he got to the hospital, there was blood all over him. They had to actually have surgery and repair his rectum. And now they're not fooling around in France. You know, they fired these guys, and they brought charges. One of the officers has been charged with rape. Let me see what I have here. One of the officers was charged with rape, and the other 3 were charged with aggravated assault. And the prime minister, I think that's the equivalent of our president, actually came and visited this young man in the hospital and assured him that matters will be taken to rectify this situation. No pun intended. Moving right along, Democrats wearing kente cloth and kneeling in light of showing support for the protesters. Now, for me, when I see politicians wearing kente cloth, for those who aren't aware what kente cloth is, it's the material that dashikis are made of, the typical African garb. It's the cloth that those clothes are made from. And I saw, I don't know, 8 or 10 politicians. They had kente cloth, they had scarves and dashikis, and they had kufis, and they were, kufis are the headgear. And they were like kneeling down. Now, I'm conflicted. Because a part of me is like, okay, I appreciate your support. I appreciate what you're trying to do. But, there's a large part of me that feels like when your white friend or the white guy at work is like, yo, what up, homeboy? Like all generic, like you can tell that's not how he talks, but he's talking to you like that because he wants you to feel accepted or he wants you to feel comfortable. So he's like, oh, hey, I can dig it, buddy. You know what I mean? He's using like these 1970s like black slang. You better know it, daddy. So that's kind of what I get from that. That's the way I feel when I see that. I didn't think that they had to go to that extreme to show support. How about actually change something? How about that? If you want to show your support for the movement, and you want to show that you are sympathetic and that you are actually about what you're saying, because you're sending this message and you're presenting this image, but if you're really about that, you're going to use all of your power, all of your resources to effect some positive change. That's my thoughts. You know what I mean? I'm like, you could keep your kente cloth in the closet or actually give that to somebody who typically wears that kind of clothing. And I feel a lot better about it if you actually did something, if you actually showed me where you're writing a policy, if you actually showed me where you're writing a law, if you're doing something to effect some type of positive change for the movement. That's what you can do. And I think that's a perfect segue to the last hot topic, which is something that I saw a friend of mine alluding to on Facebook earlier, and that's a societal reset. Society at large needs a reset. Are you going to vote for Biden? Are you going to vote for Jorgensen? Are you going to vote for Trump? The whole system needs to be revamped. The whole system needs to be upended. We don't even need to use words like vote or ballot. We don't need to use these words. I watch an internet show. It's called So What, and I've mentioned this before because I love the show. I love the brother's information. And if you're one of those people who has a problem with curse words, it's probably not the thing that you want to listen to, because they do use grown man language, is what I like to call it. But there's a panelist on the show, Kevin, and he's like a wordsmith. And so listening to him challenges me and makes me want to go, check these things out. So I've gotten into etymology, which is tracing the roots and the origin of words. And when I did the etymology on the word vote, it essentially means to wish. And so that made me go down the rabbit trail a little bit deeper, and I did the etymological search on the word ballot, and it comes from a word that means dance. So wishing and dancing. We're going down to the voting booth and we're performing a dance, doing a little jig. You know what I mean? And we're making a wish. Making a wish. And I thought about that after I looked these words up and I got some information about where these words derive from. And I know what the connotation is attached to the word vote and ballot. I know how we use it today, and I get the colloquial meanings of vote and ballot. But when I think about words and their energy, what energy were these words created with? And I apply it to the way that we use it today. That's how I feel when I'm in the voting booth. Doing a little jig. You know what I mean? Making a wish. Because people will say, oh, if you don't vote, that's the same thing as voting. Your voice wasn't heard. Personally, and I've said this before, I don't believe that there is enough transparency in our government for us to believe that a process like voting is ironclad, is trustworthy. I don't think that it's something that we can believe in wholeheartedly like that. I don't think that. I don't think that at all. I don't have enough faith in these people that we call politicians, that we call the leaders of our country. I don't have enough faith in them, to be honest, to where I believe that this process actually works. Was it Mark Twain? I think it was Mark Twain who said, if voting worked, they'd make it illegal. I believe that 100%, because I don't think that those folks in positions of authority and the positions of power would actually give common people power. I don't think that they would give us the power to pick who's going to sit up there with them on Capitol Hill. I don't call me a skeptic, call me a conspiracy theorist. I do not believe that those folks would give folks like us authority and power to choose them. Look how they act. Look how they conduct themselves. Look how they live. Look how the average politician lives versus how we live. COVID-19 showed us that most of us financially are not in the greatest shape. 2 weeks without work, and you saw 50% of this nation, if not more, in dire straits. 40 million Americans filed for unemployment. Now that's absent the people who are already on unemployment, and that's absent the people who are holding signs down by the freeway, and the homeless people, the millions of homeless people that are out there. That we're not talking about them. We're just talking about people who got put out of work due to the COVID-19 pandemic. 40 million. That showed us that the majority of us aren't in the greatest place financially. How many politicians did you see filing for unemployment? How many politicians did you see whose lives were chaotic financially because of COVID-19? And these are supposed to be people who work for us. These are supposed to be people who are in the positions that they are in because they hold our best interests at heart. But it appears that They live pretty high off of the hog, while the best of us are eking out a living check to check. Well, that wraps it up for this segment of Hot Topics. Let's get right into the main topic. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are wondering what it's all about. Recovering addicts amidst COVID-19, police brutality, and revolution. For those of you who do not know, I am a recovering addict. Matter of fact, next month will be 7 years on the, hold on now, I gotta remember all these birthdays and stuff. It's the 16th. Yeah, July 16th, I will be 7 years clean and sober from drugs, alcohol, mind-altering substances, and a criminal lifestyle. And some people, think that's something to be super proud of. And I'm kind of torn by it, like most things. I always see the duality in things. It's like, people clap you on the back for doing things that you should have been doing anyway. So I'm always like, when people congratulate me on that, I'm always like, yeah, okay, thanks. You know what I mean? Okay, I wasted 10 years of my life running the streets acting crazy, and you know what I mean? Thank you, I guess. But as an addict in recovery, I feel especially responsible to ask a few questions, because I belong to a social group that is often overlooked. I belong to a social group that is often cast aside. As a matter of fact, it's even cast aside by the federal government. The federal government only gives funding for drug rehab to prisons. Was it 2014? Excuse me. I think it was 2014. They stopped giving government assistance to rehabs, and they only put that money into prisons. So if an addict wants to get some help, he has to go to prison. Let me give you a little bit of information on the institution of addiction, because there's always an argument when you talk about addiction, when you speak as an addict. It's your choice to do drugs. That's true. But the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body, that is not our fault. See, and most people are very ignorant to what it means to be an addict. So allow me to try and give you the Reader's Digest of what it means to be an addict. I think clinicians all over this country define addiction as obsessive compulsive behavior characterized by a loss of control and tolerance. I've heard it defined that way. Compulsive, unmanageable behavior characterized by a loss of control and tolerance. And what that means is, if you allow me a tiny bit of poetic license, my body can't get high and my mind can't stop getting high. And the thing about it is, we refer to it as the chemical imbalance. The imbalance is something that we are born with. The imbalance only affects about 12% of the population. And of that 12%, about 80, I think the stats say 84% of that 12% is in prison. So when society looks at their addiction problem, they believe that they've already solved it. Prison instead of treatment. I've seen where some countries have, they haven't legalized it. People will misconstrue and say that they've legalized, I think it's Nepal. They will say that they've legalized drug use, but that isn't the case. They have not legalized drug use. They have decriminalized the use of drugs, which means instead of taking you to jail, giving you prison sentences, and filling up their jails and prisons with people who are drug addicts, when people are caught using or selling drugs, they are offered treatment versus jail, versus criminal charges, which only serves to further compound these people's lives and complicate these people's lives. But I digress. What I mean is, the disease of addiction affects such a small number of the population that most people don't really care. Most people just really don't care, you know. And when you try to educate someone on the disease of addiction, it turns into an argument because most common people do not have any information on it. And oftentimes people will look at someone like me and be like, oh boy, you ain't no addict. You ain't no, because when we think addict, we think of, Pookie. We think that guy, hey baby, you got $2 or $3 for me, you know what I'm saying? The guy that hangs out in front of the Glass House liquor store, you got 35 cents. Hey, youngster, boy, I used to be a cold player back in the day. That's what we think of when we think of an addict. We don't think of a regular, everyday guy who is someone's son, someone's dad, someone's husband. We don't think of just regular people being addicts. But I will tell you that the disease of addiction and the institution of addiction is the most diplomatic process that I've ever known. The disease of addiction doesn't discriminate. Boy, girl, black, white, rich, poor. While in rehab, I saw an expression of every kind of man, woman known to the earth. Like rich, poor. I've seen people whose parents were political figures, and I remember when they came to the rehab that we were told to keep it a secret. We were basically under a gag order to make sure that this person's family, their name wasn't tarnished. People didn't know that their kid was in rehab, and I just seen so many different kinds of people that I had to take a look at it. Now, mind you, I had to go to rehab twice before I accepted the fact that I was an addict, because I looked around and I didn't see, I was young and handsome and strong and had a good mind. And I was looking around at these people like, I have nothing in common with these folks. These folks are dope fiends. I'm just somebody who got caught with drugs, and that was the attitude that I had. And then later on, when I found myself in jail and then found myself in prison, and not only in prison, they put me in rehab in prison. And I got some information, and I found out that my life had been a constant train wreck because of the disease of addiction. But, and I say this, and I have been argued up and down, I have the most dangerous addiction known to man. Marijuana. Anyone who's ever been in rehab, do you guys remember the movie Half Baked? Remember Dave Chappelle? He goes to rehab and he stands up and says, hey man, I'm addicted to marijuana. And they stand there like, boo this man, get him out of here. That's how they treat you in real life in rehab. That's exactly how they treat you. People say, oh man, you ain't never shot no dope. That's all the white guys shot dope. And heroin and stuff. And all the brothers swear, but, I just drink a little beer, man, you know what I'm saying? Crackheads. All the brothers are crackheads. Whenever they get finished, they all crackheads. And here I am, my little young goofy self in rehab, and I'm like in between the dope fiends, the crackheads, and the heroin addicts, and everybody's like, hey dude, what's your drug of choice? Because you don't look, everybody else looks like they've been rolled hard and put away wet. And then you're in here looking all spry and handsome and clean, reasonably clean. I bathed, pretty regular. So I didn't fit the mold. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, marijuana. I've partied, you know what I mean? I've done some party drugs and stuff like that. I've done that, but that was my daily grind. My daily get down was marijuana. And a very savvy, clever, just lovable counselor helped me see things the right way. And because I was what's clinically known as highly resistant. I was a highly resistant client, and she helped me see some things about myself and get honest with myself, because you can't go to an addict and tell them that you're an addict. Oh no, baby. We are the best at saying they hating on me. You ever seen somebody walking down the street with pants that are too small for them, a shirt that's too big, they haven't washed since God knows when, and they, y'all just hating, baby, y'all, you like, hating on what, your grocery cart? We're hating on you and your grocery cart? That ain't happening. But that is our mental defect. We have to see the truth about who we are for ourselves. Because as long as someone else is telling us that there's something wrong with us, we don't want to hear that. We reject that. You just gave me an out because ain't nothing wrong with me. You hating on me. For those of you guys who are out there in Facebook world, I just dropped a bomb because I believe that was a jewel. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. So the thing about being an addict is this. It is a real disease. It is an obsession of the mind. And here's the kicker. The imbalance, no one knows that you have it until you start getting down. That's what we call getting high. For anybody who doesn't follow me, any of my squares out there, when I say getting down, that's getting high. We don't know. Getting high is a symptom of the imbalance. There are some people out there who are addicts. They just don't use drugs. It's the behavior. How did I define it? Obsessive, compulsive, unmanageable behavior characterized by a loss of control and tolerance. So how many people does that fit? How many people are in abject poverty because they can't stop spending their money on stupid things? How many people are addicted to buying things on Amazon? How many people are out there who are addicted to food? Every time I have a fight, I'm like, oh God, I'm not gonna make weight because I love Zuzus and Wham Whams. And we have to watch that as addicts. But since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit, and then boom, we get rushed with the police brutality, everybody jumping on that wave, and then now we're in this social revolution. I had to step back and ask myself, what are my fellow addicts doing right now? Because let me tell you, the greatest representation of what addiction looks like, now I might be telling off on my age a little bit, but who remembers the movie, the Gremlins? Remember the movie, The Gremlins? What's his name ain't Furby. He looks like the toy, the Furby. What's his name? Gizmo. That's his name. Gizmo. He gets I forget what kind of creature he is. The Asian man gives the little white kid the magpie. Is that what he was? He was a magpie or something like that. He gives him Gizmo and he tells him, hey man, he can't have any water. You know, don't give him any water, don't give him any food. And lo and behold, some water touches Gizmo, and he's this cute. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. There isn't a puppy or a kitten on the face of the earth that was as cute as little Gizmo. And when the water got on Gizmo, oh baby, look out. He damn near burned the whole city. Almost burned the whole city down. That's how addiction works. We have to live our lives in a certain kind of way. We have to use a certain design for living. Otherwise, we will burn the city down. Anybody who's a family member of a drug addict knows this. Yeah, that guy, that cousin who Big Mama said, hey, watch him now. Going in the den. You know he in there. You know Ray in there. Going in there with him. Anybody who has a cousin like, hey, Chris, you on that stuff. Go in there and watch that girl. Anybody who has a family member who is like that knows what I'm talking about. Because this is the only disease that you can have where nobody feels sorry for you for having it. You know what I mean? Addicts, this is a disease. If I had cancer, they would say, oh, look, his little bald head, cell bless his little bald head heart. If you had, Lord forbid, but if you had AIDS, people would say, oh man, that's pretty hard, man. Hey, take it day by day. People would have a soft spot in their heart for you. But when you're an addict, you are to be watched. Nobody feels sorry for you. And people don't think that it's a disease because you don't have outbreaks or you don't break out. You think we don't break out? You better believe we break out. We break out windows. We break out cars. We break out of jail. Oh, we break out, baby. Better believe we do. And it's disheartening that so many people are ill-educated on what it means to be an addict. And there are so many people, addicted people in this country, and I've met so many people affected by an addict if they weren't one themselves. And I encourage people who recognize that they have family members who are addicts to get involved in a program called Al-Anon, which is for family members or significant others of addicts, to help you become educated on what it means to be the family member or loved one of an addict. Because this is how you're going to acquire the information that you need, and you will be able to help other people who are ignorant to what it means to be an addict and how to be, what your relation to an addict should be. Because there's a specific way that we have to live our lives. And I have gotten into arguments with friends. Oh, you ain't no addict. You go to barbecues and stuff. Man, you got your life together now. Boy, you can have a beer. Take this beer. I can't have a beer. I can't. And we have a few little sayings in recovery, you know, like, I got another drunk in me. I got another high in me. I don't know if I got another sober in me, though. It is so difficult to think starting all the way over. I haven't drank or used marijuana or anything like that in 7 years. Now, God forbid I fell off the way. Would I want to go all the way back through rehab and go back through all of that? And I think about this because one of the things that triggers a relapse, which means, for those of you who don't know, when you relapse means when you go back to using drugs. Or what we refer to as active addiction. And one of the number one things that triggers a relapse is stress. So COVID-19 hit. I just talked about 40 million people being out of jobs. 40 million people filing for unemployment. Now that's the people who file for unemployment. We're not talking about small business owners whose businesses went belly up. We're not talking about people who were private contractors. We're just talking about people who had the ability to go and file for unemployment. And I had to ask myself, how many of those people were addicts in recovery? How many people are going to relapse because of COVID-19? How many people are going to relapse because of the stress of police brutality? How many people are going to relapse because they don't know where they stand in this societal revolution? Because they don't know what their relationship to the revolution is. How many of my brothers and sisters are going to relapse? That's how we talk in recovery. We refer to each other as brother and sister. Mostly that's to keep the fraternization down in the rehab, you know, so you don't have a 13-step baby. That's what we call when people in rehab hook up together, 13-stepping. They're 12 steps, the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, and we call that 13-stepping whenever you're trying to date or when you are dating someone who is also in rehab. But it just really made me sad. Because I've been blessed. I've been abundantly blessed to not be totally out of work. We've gone to reduced hours a couple of times during this, but we haven't just been totally out of work. And it's a blessing that I can still provide and take care of my family. And one of my good friends, he just celebrated his 5 years. He celebrated 5 years of recovery. And that may not seem like a lot to some people, but when you've been drinking and drugging, and he's an OG in the game. You know, he's an OG in the game. I ain't gonna say his age, I ain't gonna say his name, but he's an OG in the game. Salt and pepper hair, salt and pepper in the beard, you know, he's an older guy. And after, you know, maybe a 30-year run of crack and beer and street life and cripping, you know, he decided, hey, I'm gonna hang it up. You know, I'm going to get my life together. And I'm so proud that he is a friend of mine today because he is doing exceptionally well in his life. And as we both are, and I know that that's not everybody in recovery's story. So I really wanted to bring some information tonight about addiction, and anybody who has an addict in their family or a friend who's an addict, I hope that you get some information here tonight and that you can be some support for that person. You can go check on them. That auntie that used to be on drugs and she got her life together and everybody's so proud of her. Most people, we refer to you guys as normal people. The normal people have no idea the amount of mental energy and strength that it takes to stay straight day in, day out. I mean, it is unreal. I used to have a joke that I would tell in rehab ever so often. When I have these birthdays, I would always tell them, like, this does mean more to me, being sober, because I have to do more things before 6 a.m. than people in the Army. First of all, I'm an addict, I'm black, and I'm young. Won't be young for very much longer, but I am. I'm young, black, and I'm an addict. And then I have to be a father and a husband and a supervisor and, a mentor and a big brother. And then I have to do all these other things after I get done being a black, young addict. Now I have to try to figure out how I can juggle all of that and then do what you normal people do. So I always tell people, an addict in recovery is the closest representation to a superhero you're ever going to come across. Because we have to do so much to stay straight. We have to exert so much mental energy just to do what you guys normally do without even thinking about it. Now, for those people, for some strange reason, I can't see my chat in Facebook land. There it is. And like I thought, there was probably going to be a whole bunch of comments, and I wanted to get on here and I wanted to read some of the comments and see if anybody had any questions. So if anybody out there has any questions or something that they want me to address, please let me know in the chat, and I will put those I will do my best to put my thinking cap on and answer your questions and to give you some context. But back to what I was talking about. We have a lot of stuff going on in society right now, and all of these things anything that has an impact on your financial situation, your economic situation as a whole, is a trigger for relapse for an addict. And we have to be very careful. We have to stay close to our mentors, our sponsors. We have to stay close to our family, our circle of support, because if not, we will be out there looting without a riot. That's pretty much how we live our lives in active addiction. Most of us aren't criminals, but when we're out there chasing that dragon, we will do some crime. Believe that. And it's just something that we need to think about as a society, as a whole, as a community. We need to think about our brothers and sisters who struggle with addiction, especially in times like this. It's very trying times out there. And if you know anybody who is an addict in recovery, please reach out to them. Make sure that they're okay. Don't just take it for granted, or else they could fall off the wagon and they will be stealing your VCR again. They will be pawning the kids' Christmas gifts again. These are all horrible things that we have done in our active addiction. We will rob, we will lie, cheat, and steal. Because an addict in active addiction doesn't have morals, doesn't have a code. Actually, everything that you say you won't do in the name of getting high is you're just making a list of things that you're going to do. You're making a list of lines that you're going to cross. You will cross those lines in the sand in the name of chasing the dragon. That's what, for those that don't know, chasing the dragon is trying to get that first high, trying to experience what it's like to that first time you put the blunt to your mouth, or the pipe, or the bottle, or whatever your get down was. And it's very dangerous, and it's very serious. I say that because I have lost friends. I've lost friends in this sobriety lifestyle. I've had friends who have gone out, been sober for a number of years, and then they've gone out, they fell off the wagon and wound up beat by the cops, shot, and in prison within 24 hours. I mean, just their whole life got turned upside down. And a lot of, as we call them, normal people, they just don't really care, and they're not sensitive to what it means to be an addict. And that's like I said, what's my biggest reason for doing this tonight is because we just don't have enough information out there. They're not putting the information out there. They're dealing with addicts by putting them in jail. They deal with addicts by, policing them, putting them in prison, giving them criminal charges, criminal records. And addiction it's not a crime. It's a mental health issue. It's a mental health issue, and it should be treated as such. A good friend of mine, I like to keep some friends' names out of things just because I don't know how until I know that they're okay with me mentioning their names. I was looking at something that he wrote the other day, and he spoke about addiction should be treated, not prosecuted. And that's exactly how I feel. And yes, I do have a personal stake in it because I am an addict in recovery, and I know all too well how easy it is to fall off the wagon without the information. It wasn't until I got the information that I discovered a design for living that helped me be successful at living life. Now, I'm not saying that I live my life perfectly and I do everything right and I live 100% by the book. That's not what I'm saying. But I do not make the kind of mistakes that wind me up in jail, that wind me up in prison, that have me carrying a gun or doing crimes, hurting people. And that is a success for me, because once upon a time I was living that way. And it wasn't until I met these good folks and I got some information, I learned, oh wow, the imbalance isn't my fault. But now that I'm aware of the imbalance, it is my responsibility to govern the imbalance so that I'm not wreaking havoc on society and on my fellow man, woman, and children. That's what happens. Now, that's what is 100% in my control. That's in my control. How I govern my imbalance to make sure that I'm not out here living an unbecoming life and causing hurt, harm, and danger to other people. That's what it's all about. Now, I hope you've received some information tonight. I hope I sparked a fire, and you seek out some more information from people who are more qualified than myself to lead you down that path. The disease of addiction is real. It doesn't discriminate. And in these trying times of COVID-19, police brutality, and social revolution, let us not forget our brothers and sisters who struggle with the disease of addiction. Once again, my name is Arshawn Wade, aka The Angry Nerd. If you want to support The Angry Nerd podcast, scurry on over to Cash App, $ The Angry Nerd. We'll take them twos and fews off your hands. Big news on the horizon. Now, I'm not going to shout out this business until I 100% got the check in the mail that they are taking me on as a sponsor. But I am looking at acquiring my first sponsor. I'm super excited about it. So what that means is somebody's going to put some money into this show, and it's going to get better. It's going to get a production team behind it, and we're going to be doing big things. Until that happens, it'll just be me doing it all by myself, bringing the information the best that I can, doing the thing that I do, hoping that I get plenty of love and support from my brothers and sisters who are on podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. For all my family out there in Facebook, I'm signing off. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka The Angry Nerd. Peace.